What is going on, GBA? I am the Confusion, and we are here to bring you guys week 5 of the weekly recaps. And before I introduce my lovely co-host, I just want to preface by saying I do not feel so well, guys. You might be able to tell by my voice or my sniffling every once in a while, but I'm really just not feeling up to par, so I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, but hopefully still a good one. I'll try my best to give you guys a good performance here. But without further ado, Spastic.
It's okay, Confusion. We still love you.
Alright, thanks, man. I appreciate that. But you know what? Because of that, we're going to jump right into the first game of week 5, and that is the Borussia Dortmund up against the Pittsburgh Piratas. And Lars is starting off by bringing Magirna, Latias, Primarina, Rodham Heat, Crawdon, and Tornadus, while Tup is going to bring the Scissor, Tapu Koko, Hitmontop, Tangrowth, Slowking, and Hydreigon. Now, right off the bat, there's a few things you can notice by looking at the team matchup here. One thing I noticed is there is no way for either team to set up hazards. That is not something you usually see in league-type format, or really in general play. Unless you're in VGC, you're usually going to see some sort of hazards, or at least a Pokemon that can set up those hazards. In this game, we really don't see a Pokemon that has the ability to get any hazards up, so it's going to be interesting. Sorry, I have voice cracks going crazy, but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays off without the chip damage that hazards usually provide. The second thing I noticed is that Tup does not have a Volt Switch immunity. Well, really neither team has a Volt Switch immunity, which is kind of interesting. Rodham Heat is able to Volt Switch around Tup's team, and the Tapu Koko would be able to Volt Switch around the Donphan's team and Lars. So right off the bat, we do see a common lead that Tup has had, which is 2 electric types, the Tapu Koko and blank electric type. In this case, it is Rodham Heat. Rodham Heat Volt switches out, as you know, Tapu Koko doesn't do too much damage, and we have the Scarf Tornadus. Now, the reason I'm going into detail about these first 2 turns is because it's really important. Lars knows that his Tornadus is Scarfed, and it can Sludge Wave and kill the Tapu Koko. The thing is, Tup has been in this situation before, and that's why, Lars is, gonna go for it. It's actually going to switch out. The thing is, the Tapu Koko, the Lars, sorry, I'm all messed up. Tup is aware of what's happening, and he countered that knowing what Lars was gonna do. So I gotta give props right there to Tup. That was really impressive right off the bat. Right after that, I feel like Tup's weakness in this match was him not preparing enough for Lars' dual Fairy Core. Although, he did have the Slowking, which was a relatively good switch-in. It has good special bulk, and Magirna and Primarina couldn't do too much to it, especially with the help of Regenerator. Tangrowth did have an Assault Vest, so it was really, really nice on that end. If I get a few things wrong here and there, I'm sorry, guys. This weekend, I keep saying, I felt so sick. But trying to keep it going here, Tangrowth goes down super quickly to Latias' Draco Meteor, and that really puts Tup on the backhand. It breaks his Regenerator Core. Now he just has a Slowking, and it really forces Slowking into a position where it needs to take a lot more hits. Not only that, but later on Slowking gets U-turn crit from the Tornadus, and it was poisoned prior due to the Sludge Wave, so you really have some unfortunate hacks, which did result in losing the Slowking. And losing the Slowking is really what I feel, just like last week, caused Tup to lose the game. Losing that Slowking, breaking the Regenerator Core is really what breaks Tup's team in general. Beyond that, Lars' team, on the other hand, did not have a lot of sustain or recovery, but it didn't really need to because Lars was constantly on the offensive, really placing a lot of pressure with his 2 fairies, and also he had the right Pokemon to take hits. Rodham Heat could take the right hits from certain mons, Primarina as well, so that really allowed Lars to take the advantage and put on a lot of pressure with things like Crawdon, Tornadus, and like I said, the Primarina. Not only that, but Tup, to give the man his due credit, did play an amazing game. I want to say that because as I was watching his side, he had an amazing prediction game. He was focused. He had a game plan. So I really think that it's not that Tup is a bad, competitor, even though he is 0-5. He is a good competitor, just these matches have not been in his favor, but I do want to give him his fair credit in that sense. But what did you think of this match?
Not setting up hazards is interesting to see in League format, because with as many switches as a lot of coaches do, hazards can be crucial for getting chip damage, or in toxic spikes, getting residual status and chip damage that way. Also, breaking a regenerator core, that can be a devastating blow to a team with such a strong defensive core. The regenerator can really soak hits and then switch out. And when you break that, it's really hard to keep the defense up. But the next game we talk about, there was a lot of offense and a lot of momentum. We're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks versus the New Orleans Pelipers. Battler X bringing Hariyama, Starmie, Kartana, Xurkitree, Cresselia, and Zoroark. John bringing Jolteon, Skarmory, Infernape, Tapu Bulu, Scolipede, and Sneasel. Now, I want to preface this match by saying Battler X is using Zoroark really, really well. Best that I've seen in League format thus far. Because turn 1, he sends out Zoroark disguised as Cresselia. John sends out Skarmory, thinking, okay, Skarmory can take a hit from Cress, whatever. Flamethrower, turn 1, deals a lot of damage. It was Hariyama. Sorry, stayed in on Hariyama. Switched in, took a flamethrower to the face, dealt a lot of damage to the Skarmory, which came back to bite it later. So, Battler X pulling a lot of Zoroark shenanigans. Later, he would pull the same trick and actually get the KO on the Skarmory with the flamethrower, revealing that yes, it was indeed Zoroark, but at that point, what can you do? John running HP Fire on Tapu Bulu was a very interesting choice, considering how physically offensive Tapu Bulu is, not as much especially offensive. But Tapu Bulu staying in on a Kartana, luring it out and OHKOing it with HP Fire was a really great plan, really great play. Props to John on that. Infernape and Jolteon both keeping great momentum, U-turning and Volt switching. Scarf Infernape making sure he outspeeds a lot of things, keeping the momentum in his favor. But then Battler X sets up Trick Room. Now the part that confused me was when he Trick Roomed and then doubled out into Zoroark. Zoroark is fast. Perhaps he was trying to keep John guessing, but eventually it didn't really work out in his favor. Cresselia and Tapu Bulu eventually getting to trade Toxics. So there's a lot of chip happening there. Towards the end, X switching into Xurkitree on Scolipede, knowing that Scolipede usually runs Earthquake, and this one did. It was a really risky play, but ultimately Xurkitree lived the hit. Xurkitree lived the Earthquake, and then proceeded to just wreck Scolipede with a Thunderbolt. But it still wasn't enough in the end. AV Jolteon, not something you see every day, but a good creative set allowed it to take a nice hit and then just finish the game cleaning up house. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think some important things is definitely the Tapu Bulu. Definitely John taking a note out of Crimson's book and bringing a subtoxic Tapu Bulu. Really, really cool. Hidden Power of Fire. A lot of tech on that set, but tech that works. And that's important. It's good to bring tech because you want to surprise your opponent, but if it's not going to work, well, then there's some issues. But because it worked, he brought a lot of cool sets. The Jolteon I loved with the Assault Vest. Especially defensive, Jolteon can actually handle a lot of the Sawsbuck's team, especially things like the Xurkitree and the Starmie, and clearly we saw that come into effect. So I definitely thought that was a good game. But moving on, we have the San Diego Chargers up against the Oleola Athletic. Emphy bringing Virizion, Lando T, Magnezone, Alolan Muck, Pelipper, and Kabutops, while Callum and the Oleola Athletic bring Rotom Wash, Shaman, Tyranitar, Excadrill, Aromatisse, and Crobat. Now, both Envy and Callum came into this game on their prediction game. Watching both sides of the match, they were there to make predictions. Now, the difference between their predictions is Envy was making aggressive predictions and Callum was making regressive predictions, meaning he was, predicting more on the defensive side and making sure that Envy doesn't catch him off guard, while Envy was trying to catch him off guard and do a lot of damage. So an example of that is definitely that Tech Magnezone running the hidden power, fighting the prediction game. He put himself in offensive positions. Now, Callum did the same thing, but he wasn't really on the offensive. He mentions it in his commentary. He really wasn't on the offensive, and I think he had the team to pull off an offensive, kind of play style, but he didn't go that route, and that really put him on the backtrack. So yeah, Envy starting the game really hard by pressuring Callum's team, the Magnezone getting a lot of damage, Lando T, Pelipper, and Magnezone all having U-turn and Volt Switch, and with the help of Stealth Rocks, which got put up a little late in the game, the help of Stealth Rocks really helped whittle down things like the Tyranitar, things like the Rotom Wash, things like the Crobat, which didn't have great reliable recovery. Crobat did, but because it's weak to the Rocks damage, it's really not that great, and that really put Callum again on the back foot. He had to keep making predictions that would keep his team members alive. He couldn't put himself in an offensive position. So things we saw, an example of that is the Muck. The Muck was carrying the Brick Break for the Tyranitar, and that could have been cool, but Callum did predict that. He went into the Crobat and played really nicely around the Alolan Muck. The only problem was, like I keep saying, he couldn't get on the offensive. I feel like he had the capability to with things like the Shaman. Shaman really did not have a lot of switch-ins with the right coverage, so I feel like he could have played more offensive with that, more offensive with the Excadrill, kept that around a little more. But because of that, the Envy was able to predict and put him in a favorable position and come on top with a 5-0. In the end, we have Pelipper setting up the Rain. We have the Rain War. I didn't see the Rain War come into effect too much. It was there, though. Pelipper getting up the Rain after the Tyranitar goes down. Muck outsped it. Clicked Brick Break. That thing went down. Pelipper can come in. Kabutops can then come in and get 2 kills. Kabutops sweeping. Pretty cool. But, what do you think, Spastic, of this weather war?
The weather war, yes. Both coaches keeping early momentum in their favor, which can be really nice for setting the pace of the match. But when both coaches are doing it, then you got to play around each other. The hidden power reads, I was really happy to see those. Pulling off proper hidden power reads on the proper types, getting super effective hits. That was nice to see early on. But in the end, Kabutops coming in and cleaning and just sweeping up. Really nice to see. But sweeping is not the name of the game for this next game. We have the Tampa Bay Luxrays versus the San Francisco Arcaniners. Mono bringing Roserade, Miltank, Bisharp, Greninja, Buzzwole, and Florges. While George brought Suicune, Raikou, Mew, Drapion, Garchomp, and Mismagius. Right off the bat, poor Mismagius saw one turn out on the field, got crit, went down. Granted, it was a crit Moonblast, but at +2 special attack, it probably didn't matter all that much, but it's still not fun. There were a lot of Calm Minds to start up, and Suicune and Florges both going for Calm Minds, trying to get that escalation going, but they cut it off pretty quick. But Florges did get a nice kill. Both coaches setting up hazards early. We talked about the first game, nobody setting up hazards. This game, hazards abounded. Both coaches making sure they got all their hazards up early. Garchomp setting up rocks. Roserade setting up spikes. And who wasn't this set up? Oh yeah. And then rocks getting set up on both sides. Miltank setting up rocks. Sorry. Looking at my notes here. Garchomp, very persistent. Miltank, even more persistent. The 10 turns of Garchomp clicking Earthquake, Miltank milk drinking. It was interesting, but Miltank won in the end. And then Mew versus Greninja. This part made me laugh. The captains facing off. But Greninja switching in when Mew went for a Z-powered Shattered Psyche, to which he is completely immune. It's a really nice read on Mono's part. And that really hurt George's momentum. Unlucky, but the reads were on point. But then there was a lucky freeze on Roserade, so you think it would balance out, but Roserade with Natural Cure proved not good. Nah, man, I'm good. Mono was just having a really good prediction game. Bisharp with the Lumberry. Lumberry popping off early, making sure that Bisharp is at full strength, getting a nice pursuit kill, cleaning up at the end. Again, Mono's prediction really solid this game. What predict you? What do you predict in this?
Well, I was really interested to see how how Mew kind of faced up in this, because it did have such a good matchup. It had the right coverage, had a Z power, it just needed to set up that nasty plot, and it could have done a lot of damage. The thing is, as you know, George was trying to set up the match so that can happen. Certain things on Mono's side, he was just saying no. He switched out the Roserade, you know, from the freeze, so the Roserade sack, not the Roserade sack, so that, you know, Mew can end up coming in and setting up free on that thing. That didn't end up happening. Mew just really couldn't find the right time to set up, and even if it did, as Mono said, he had the right things to take those hits. So I don't think it ended up mattering too much, but it would have been very, very cool to see that Mew sweep. Now, as you said about the hazards, our next game is also a game that is heavily influenced, really, by the hazards. It is the San Jose Sharpedos up against the Detroit Steelwings. Tom bringing Thundurus, Therian, Nidoqueen, Porygon 2, the Hitmonlee, Zygarde Dog, and Darmanitan, while Chase brings the Tornadus, Therian, Crocodile, Slowbro, Serena, Magneton, and Volcarona. Now, this game, did come down to the timer, but I wouldn't say that was the deciding factor on who won. It was a game that was much, much more than that. For me, it was a game of offensive pressure and hazard stacking. The way it worked with hazards is the Detroit Steelwings did have Crocodile with Stealth Rocks. Now, if he did set that up earlier on, that would have pressured the Darmanitan and the Thundurus, which were really the offensive pivots that Tom was trying to pressure Chase with. Now, if rocks went up, Thundurus with Life Orb would have gotten whittled down way quicker, and since Darmanitan was kind of handled by the Slowbro, even though it was choice banded, rocks would have definitely hurt along with the Rocky Helmet. So I think that if he got those Stealth Rocks up, the game would have been a little differently, but regardless, that didn't end up happening. The hazards that did get up, though, were on Tom's side with the Nidoqueen. It had Toxic Spikes and Stealth Rocks, and being that Chase's two spinners, Tentacruel and Serena, both take super effective damage from the Nidoqueen, Tom took advantage of that and set up hazards with that Nidoqueen. Now that really pressured down the Slowbro and the Serena. Those, you know, that water grass core right there was really whittled down with poison damage on both of them. The rocks later on, it's not fun. Serena had a few opportunities to spin, but Chase decided he wanted to keep his Serena more healthy, and in the end, I guess you could say that did not pay off too well for him, because the hazards really hurt the Volcarona, stopped any chance of that sweeping, put a lot of hurt into the Tornadus, into the Crocodile even, so it was just really unfortunate to see all those hazards kind of whittle down his team, and Chase not really being able to do too much. But on Tom's end, that really, really helped the Thundurus and the Darmanitan, a Life Orb and a choice banded crazy output, 145 special attack, 140 attack. It's a lot of damage output, and with hazards, this is the true example of offense that just breaks down teams, and Tom took advantage of that and really went for it. He had defensive backbones in Porygon 2, it even carried Signal Beam, so that was really cool to see that hurt the Slowbro or the Serena or even the Crocodile. Some cool things I did want to point out as I turn my notes over is the Yawn Slowbro. I thought that was really, really cool just because it could have forced switches. Tom did not want to switch out the Porygon 2, so it did end up going to sleep. But Yawn was able to force switches, so if the Thundurus came in, he could Yawn that thing and force that thing to go right back out. And like I said, if the Stealth Rocks were up, that would have been a different game. Magneton was behind a light screen and got crit by a Thunderbolt, so it really brought that thing down. Did not have any reliable recovery, so Magneton had to go down relatively quickly. It did have Magnet Rise, so it could wall the Nidoqueen, But unfortunately, like I said, it did have to go down a bit earlier. And although this did go down to the timer, I think it's safe to say that the San Jose Sharpedos would have ended up taking that game if there was no timer. Now, the one thing I don't want to hear from you guys is that Chase timer stalled, and he did not let Tom win. The reason I don't want to hear that is because Tom was clicking slack off on his slow bro and stalling out because he had to save his differential. If he just, said, well, I know I'm going to lose this game, I might as well give it to him, it would have been a 4-0, and that would have put the Chase -4 in his differential, and I don't think Chase wants that. He wanted to preserve his differential, and by keeping one Mon alive, it ended up turning his differential to a -3 instead of a -4. Now, you might find it scummy, but I don't think it is, because in a league where you have to preserve differential and make sure you are playing the best you can, if this was his way to save his differential and play the best he can, then I think that is perfectly fine. San Jose Sharpedos, even though they had 4 Mons alive and could have won, the timer is a thing, and only ended up with a +3 differential. But yeah, Spastic, what did you think of this timer stall game? I think the second time.
Yeah, there've been a couple of timer stall games this season. Sometimes it's a legitimate strategy, other times it's, all right, guys, come on. But in this case, yeah, preserving differential is key. Porygon 2 tracing Magnet Pull onto the Magneton, really clever play. Ultimately, Magneton volt switching out, but that could have really worked in Tom's favor. Toxic Spikes. Oh my god, Toxic Spikes hurt Chase's team. Having no way to remove them, his entire team getting whittled down the entire game. Not fun whatsoever. And that's something I've noticed. A lot of coaches don't have clerics on their teams. Not a lot of heal bellers. And then what mons they do have that do have heal bell don't always bring it. Nor do they always get to use it, like heal bell, aromatherapy. Not even a whole lot of wish passing this season. But I digress. The next game we talk about didn't really need it, just a lot of offense. And early poisonings really hurting the longevity of the game is the San Francisco Giants versus the Utah Jasmine. Geo bringing Tapu Fini, Salamence, Conkeldurr, Amoonguss, Gengar, and Bronzong, while Necro brings Lantern, Klefki, Zapdos, Scrafty, Hippowdon, and Cloyster. Now, the early Toxic on Zapdos really pressured its longevity, forcing Necro to click Roost more often and keep the offensive pressure off. But Zapdos bringing Heat Wave did put pressure on the Bronzong to force Geo to sack it off early so he could get a safe switch in, because at that point nothing on his team really wants to take a Heat Wave from a Zapdos. I mean, Salamence could, but you don't want that much damage on it. Scrafty getting a couple of good predicted knockoffs. Knocked off Amoonguss' Assault Vest, and then clicking knockoff right afterward, predicting a switch, knocking off Tapu Fini's leftovers. So Scrafty getting good utility while still putting on good offense. Klefki setting up spikes, forcing Tapu Fini to defog after trying to set up a Calm Mind. So it kept it from setting up as much as he wanted while still keeping the hazards up. Ultimately working out in his favor, getting a little bit of chip damage before defogged out. Salamence absolutely destroying Lantern with the devastating Drake. It was a little bit of an overkill, but and then when it came in, it lived an Ice Shard from Cloyster. It laid down some serious hurt with an Outrage, but ultimately not enough. Both Mons lived. Cloyster took it down with the second Ice Shard. Gengar going down to an Earthquake from Hippowdon. Not something we would expect to see, but oh right, Gen 7 changes. Gengar no longer has Levitate, which may or may not hurt its credibility. I mean, it's still a great offensive Mon, but the fact that it's not immune to ground anymore does really hurt. Without Assault Fest, Amoonguss got worn down a lot easier because all it had was Giga Drain to keep it alive. Not setting up Leech Seed, didn't have access to any other recovery. Hippowdon setting up the sand, getting residual chip damage on all of Geo's team, and then Zapdos coming in, cleaning up with Heat Wave. The weather played a decent enough part, but Geo brought it. Necro brought it just for the chip damage. I do want to make a quick note about Geo's clicking his Z move. He admitted it was probably a misplay. How he could have easily EQ'd the Lantern, gotten the kill, and then devastating Draked on the Cloyster. Now, hindsight is 50-50, but he figured this out during the game. I gotta give props to coaches that realize they may have potentially made a mistake, so that even if they can't fix it during that match, they can still take that knowledge and apply it later on. So, and that's crucial for anybody playing competitive format, learning from your mistakes. And these coaches, they're players just like the rest of us. They're just better at it than a lot of us.
Yeah, I have to agree. I want to highlight, hey, Necrostevo's first game in the GBA, and congrats to him for grabbing his first win in the GBA. Very, very impressive.
Yes.
Now, even with a team he's not used to using, it's not his, it's Cooper's, and he is clearly doing the Utah Jasmine's some justice here. But also want to give due credit to Geo. As I watched his game, his head was in it. He was really trying to make the right plays. I don't think he messed up too much. Like you said, the misplay with Dragonium Z, clicking that on the Lantern was questionable. Like you said, he realized that. I'm not going to dive into that, but yeah, regardless, I think it was a really, really good game. So hopping into the next one, probably one of the more fast-paced matches, is the Philadelphia Scissors up against the St. Louis Rampardos. Chimp bringing his Dougie, his Kyurem Black, Thundurus, Azumarill, Gligar, and Volcanion, while Dan brings his Toxapex, Staraptor, Haxorus, Electros, Victini, and Clefable. This is going to be interesting. Because this game is so short, I actually am going to go through it turn by turn and kind of show you the important parts of this match. Starting with turn 1, we have a crit. A crit that kills Electros. Volcanion is Choice Specs, clicks Steam Eruption, and the Electros goes down due completely to a critical hit. Now that was really, really unfortunate. It's hard to predict what the rest of the match would have been if the Volcanion was weakened, because later on, blah blah blah. I'm not gonna theory him on, but yeah, that is what happens. An unfortunate Steam Eruption does put Dan on the immediate backhand. It's not the first time we've seen first turn crits, but it is one of the first times we've seen a first turn crit that completely turns the game from a 6-6 to a 5-6. Not only that, but Toxapex lures in the Kyurem Black, and because it couldn't get on those toxic spikes on the field quick enough, Kyurem Black is able to come in, not get poisoned, and set up a free sub. And that is a lot of trouble because Kyurem Black just simply 2-hit KOs the Clefable with 2 Iron Heads, and the Staraptor is not even able to kill with the Brave Bird, and is forced to die to a Fusion Bolt, and immediately puts Dan on the 6th turn of the game with 3 Mons down. That is so hard to come back with, but he kind of has a chance to, which is through his Haxorus. And his Haxorus was a Dragon Dance set. He sets up a Dragon Dance twice on the Azumarill, but it could have actually killed it. What happened is Dan tried to predict and Dragon Claw on the Azumarill because he did not want that Gligar coming in. He was very scared that it was able to, that it could have been able to stop a Haxorus sweep. What ended up happening is he clicked Dragon Claw on the Azumarill. Azumarill just goes for 3 Banded Aqua Jets, all doing around 25%, which makes it so once the Haxorus is able to kill the Azumarill, Dugtrio is able to come in. It is sashed. Even though toxic spikes are up, it is able to live the Dragon Claw and kill it off with an Earthquake. And from there, Toxapex is going to go down to the Thundurus Incarnate. Now, I do want to give Chimp some praise. He preserved his Thunderous very well for the Tox Packs. He brought the right sets, made the right plays, handled the Haxorus fine, and was able to snag that win. But at the same time, unfortunate hacks for Dan. Dan saw the substitute Kyurem Black coming. He knew what was going to happen that game, but with his team and the unfortunate hacks that prevailed, he could not combat. He cannot really come back from that. I guess you could say that if he poisons out the Azumarill, maybe he had a chance. But regardless, this is what happened. Dan is able to bring his differential a bit higher, not lose too much. He lost 2-0 instead of maybe a 4-0 or a 5-0. So good on him, but definitely good on Chimp. Very impressive. I know he's kind of struggling with the team. He's not too into it, but clearly he knows how to prep. He knows how to battle. And I was very impressed to see him play this game. But what did you think, Spastic, about this game?
Not really much else to say. I mean, you covered all the points. I will say, Kyurem Black, monstrous offensive presence. Oh my Lanta, that base 170 attack. Very few things want to take a hit from it. It can 2-hit KO at least a lot of the things in draft format, and even the things that can survive 2 hits don't survive them well most of the time, unless they have some dedicated recovery. But yeah, that match over really quickly. The next match, not over so quickly. This match took a long time to get through. Both coaches playing very defensively. This is the Florida Gators versus the Free State Torcats. Gator brought Heatran, Galvantula, Pyukumuku, Mamoswine, Hawlucha, and Whimsicott, while Duncan brought Lando, Weavile, Alola Marowak, Metagross, Mandibuzz, and Keldeo. Sorry, I wrote it down as Alowak. I'm like, Alowa? Alright. So speaking of Alowak, turn 1, Alola Marowak going down to an Earth Power. Ouch. Alola Marowak has... Oh, no, sorry. It was Earthquake from Mamoswine. Sorry. Confusion, you got me sick over the microphone. What is this?
I'm sorry.
Alright, so Alola Marowak going down, turn 1. That really hurt Duncan, not gonna lie. Because it has a lot of offensive presence. Holding that thick club, being able to fire off Flare Blitzes, Shadow Bones, Earthquakes, just doubling that already impressive attack stat. It can break through a lot of Gators team. And going down turn 1 to Earthquake, that sucked. Duncan working on his prediction game, predicting that Heatran to switch into Whimsicott, and so he clicked a Icy Wind on the Keldeo instead of Hydro Pumper. Oh no, it was Surf. Sorry. Yeah, Duncan working on his prediction game, working out well for him. But there was a lot of defensive switching, especially in the first half. Like I said, Pyukumuku soaking up a lot of hits throughout the entire match. Gator really playing around Duncan's team with Pyukumuku coming in, soaking a hit, protecting, getting a little bit of extra leftovers recovery, getting off key slow baton passes, which really kept the momentum in Gator's favor. Sacking Mandibuzz to the Galvantula after it set up sticky webs to ensure that he could defog it and just get it off the field and get a safe switch in. Good play. It sucked that Mandibuzz went down so quickly and so easily, but keeping webs up would have been even more detrimental to Duncan's team. The lucky burn on Keldeo early in the game from Heatran's Flamethrower. Unfortunate, but all it really did was negate the leftovers that Keldeo had. So it didn't allow it to live as long as it would have liked. But, I mean, it was a 10% chance. The roll was in his favor. Towards the end, though, Mamoswine reading that Earthquake into Metagross, taking it down before just proceeding to clean up the rest of the game. Gator really working well with predictions. He seems to be very comfortable with his team, knowing how to work it around. Hawlucha just straight running without an item. It would have been nice to see it do more work, but Duncan didn't allow it to do a whole lot to his team, which was really nice to see them both playing very defensively. It was a very long game, though. Oh my lands, I have to try and watch that thing. Urgh. I don't know. What did you think it was long too? Am I the only one?
No, oh my god, it was definitely a long game, especially since the games kind of came out a little late. But besides that, I mean, the Heatran coming in at the right times and getting those kills is astounding. But yeah, definitely a long game. But I think overall a great week 5. As we kind of near the midpoint of the season, I guess we will start and look at the standings, Sun Conference, Moon Conference, all the divisions. We got the Philadelphia Scissors, Luxrays, Jasmines, and Chim Chargers all at the top of their divisions. Very cool to see the Utah Jasmine and Nick Rostivo just joined, but still carrying that legacy of the Jasmines, top of his division. Very cool to see. We have the same kind of unfortunate losers at the bottom. I don't call them losers, but they're losing their battles and not really gaining enough wins. Pittsburgh Piratas obviously not able to snag a win yet, but I have a feeling that is going to change. He would not be in the GBA if not for getting a cup. I know he will get some wins. But yeah, he's got the lowest differential at this point, and then the rest we have the Sawsbucks, Giantes, and Toracats all with very low differentials because they're all 1 and 4. Which is annoying. I want to point out the Melee division, how the Sharpedos and the Steel Wings have the same differential, even a higher one than the Jasmines, but because of the win-loss ratio, the Detroit Steel Wings are below the Sharpedos and the Jasmines, and Sharpedos below the Jasmines. So I think the conferences look really, really nice. Obviously, it's annoying to see such veterans such low, but at the same time, it shows that creative minds are definitely able to come in and surprise and, you know, outdo a lot of these veterans. But I have a feeling a few of them are going to come back. People like Gio, people like Steve, like I know they've not been doing too well, but we also know they're good battlers. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you basically said everything I was going to say, especially about the veterans being at the bottom and the newcomers being at the top. It's interesting to watch how these seasons are playing out, seeing all this fresh blood come in and just turn the scene upside down, especially since we're in a new generation. A lot of people are still figuring out the metagame, even those who play it competitively, some of those who play it for a living. Still figuring out how everything works, how synergy works, and given that this was a free draft, there were no tiers, a lot of coaches figuring out what works and what doesn't. So we'll see how that translates into later seasons, but again, we're only halfway through this season. There's still a lot to happen. We could get a couple more surprising sweeps. Looking at you, Crimson, pull off a third one. But yeah, anything can change. It's still only halfway. So don't write off anybody. Don't write off Tup. Don't write off Geo. You could be surprised. You never know what. Last season, we had somebody go 6-6 and still make it to the playoffs. So hey, you never know.
Yeah, and I think you made I think you made a good point when you said that this is a free draft. And although you may think that makes the teams a lot stronger, in a sense it does, but it's very hard to prep for other teams who also have drafted in a free draft. In my opinion, free drafts are obviously not as fun as the tier drafts because we are, so fresh and new into this generation. I think it was only necessary, but hopefully from there we will go into a tier draft and maybe see some more lower tiered, Mons. Come on, someone draft Beware, someone draft Crabaminable, I don't know. But yeah, from there we'll see the free draft definitely impacts 100%. The free draft is a huge impact to Season 7. But going from there, we're going to jump into the league leaders, the top killers of Season 7. And with no surprise, you will see Cobalion and Crocodile sitting at number 1 and number 2, both from the Steel Wing side. Crocodile actually catching up to Cobalion and getting another kill this week, so they're both sitting at 9 kills, but Crocodile does have one more death, so it hurts its differential, but still both of them at the top. And we still see Volcanion in the 3rd position, so your 1, 2, and 3 spots have not changed, although their statistics have changed. That is really, really cool to see. Right after that, we have the San Diego Chargers rocking out with their Alolan Muck. That thing has been putting in a ton of work, and I'm very happy to see that. I think the only Alolan Mon up here to be doing so well, so props to Envy for using that. Halucha finally snagging some more kills. It got a sweep very early on in the season, so just getting a few more kills allowed it to kind of climb back up to that number 5th spot, overtaking the Suicune. And then from there we have electric types like Zapdos and Magnezone, fire types like Victini and Infernape mons you expect to see up here, and Dugtrio. 20 buff to its attack allows it to definitely be a threat and keep it up here in league leaders. But what do you think, Spastic?
I'm waiting for somebody to catch up to Cobalion and Crocodile. I want to see that.
I mean, we got some close people. Volcanion sitting at 8.
It's like, keep going. I want to see it. I want to see more. But how do words? I swear, this episode of Weekly Recap brought to you by the English language. How do you do it? Alolan Muck sitting in the top of the kills is interesting because we never see regular Muck, but here is Alolan Muck putting in a lot of good work, stab knockoffs, stab poison jabs, having the only one weakness that really hurt Muck, having multiple weaknesses, but Alolan Muck only having one, and like. I really not much else to say other than, yeah, let's keep it going. Let's see some new mons. Let's keep up the kills.
Yeah, very, very excited to see the rest of the season. Next week is actually going to be the midpoint where we jump into the weekly recap for week 6. There are 12 weeks in the GBA, and that will be the midpoint. So then we will actually be able to look at the divisions and conferences and start to be able to say, okay, this is probably who's going to make it. This is probably who's going to struggle in making it. But very interested to see how the rest of the weeks go, see how the league leaders go. I'm going to go drink some tea because I'm like a dead horse right now. But that is going to be it. We will see you guys next week.
Bye.
No, where's the aloha? I like that.
Aloha.